Welcome, everybody. Excited to talk about this topic today. I wanted to kick things off by giving you a little insight into our speakers and introducing them. Our first speaker is Danielle DeLiberero. She has been a human resource professional for close to 15 years. And in her career, she has focused on talent acquisition, university relations, and employee engagement in many industries, including, but not limited to, I think here, financial services, consulting, engineering, manufacturing, and technology. She's overseeing global university relations programs for 2 different companies, so she's going to provide us with a lot of great insights here. And more importantly, working in these different companies has allowed her to travel the world and learn about many different cultures. And it has also allowed her to taste many different cuisines. So welcome, Danielle.
Thanks so much.
Yes. And I also have Gail Jacobs. She's a senior manager of global mobility and recruiting operations for RMS, for Risk Management Solutions. Welcome. Gail is an SPHR as well as a GPHR, very impressive, has more than 25 years experience in human resources, education, and recruitment. Currently, she is the Senior Manager for Global Mobility and Recruiting Operations for RMS and is based in Newark, California. RMS develops and delivers the world's leading catastrophic risk models. Previously, she was a Senior Manager for the Global Recruiting Center for CDM Smith and the Director of Talent Sourcing and Global Mobility with Sensata Technologies, formerly the Sensors and Controls Division of Texas Instruments. In these roles, she's oversaw global staffing, university relations, immigration and orientation, and international and domestic relocation. She has a lot of great experience. I'm excited to have her here. And lastly, I will introduce you to Bridget Webb, the Vice President of Marketing for WePow. Bridget has a variety of experiences. She not only has had experience working in marketing at WePow, but she has also spent a great deal of time in recruiting, particularly in the RPO market. So I'm really excited to have Bridget's insights here from a marketing perspective as well as recruitment. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. If I can get my mouse moved to the next page. There we go. All right. Let's get this party started here.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, everybody else, for joining today's call. WePow and myself are super excited to be part of today's University Recruiting Webinar. Here at WePow, we understand the importance of attracting, engaging, and ultimately hiring the best possible new talent out there. We recognize that today's youth is looking for new ways of interacting with their future employer. That's why our video interviewing platform has been both popular by this generation and proven to be extremely successful with companies of all sizes across a multitude of industries. We put recruiting into the palm of your hand, allowing interviews to happen anytime, anywhere. With that being said, let's get the webinar started.
Wonderful. We're going to start our next slide with a poll to get you guys interactive. So you can go ahead and text or enter in your answer. The question for our poll this morning, or I guess this afternoon, is why is university recruiting important for your company? Is it to engage new grads, identify critical talent available in the marketplace, educate and grow your brand, or we've always done it? So please go ahead and weigh in. Interesting as I watch the answers kind of stream in. We wanted to really get a baseline as far as why it's important for you guys so we can really customize the rest of the presentation to suit the audience's needs here. All right, I guess let's go ahead and can we close out the poll and then display the results? Can Danielle and Gail, can you see here? Do you have any, Danielle, do you have any insights, anything you're surprised about here by the results?
No, absolutely. I'm pretty excited to see the movement. So thinking when it first kicked off, there was a lot of we want to engage new grads. I was just kind of watching the poll go back and forth. And I was sitting there saying, wow, nobody's looking to use it as a marketing tool. And then all of a sudden, this educate and grow our brand started to really spike and move around. And so it was good to see that there was the correlation between the two, that people are seeing that university recruiting is not just about critical talent, but it's also about engagement, education, marketing, about getting your brand out there for
the next generation and the next generation because of the network that these students will have and the relationships that they have with each other. So it's good to see that we're seeing some correlation between these answers here.
What about you, Gail? Anything you're surprised about or interested in?
Well, it's funny to me that we've always done it this way, didn't pop up more, because I've seen a lot of organizations and have talked to a lot of people that it's just part of their process and they're not really utilizing it for a strategic advantage. It's just one of those things where you get out there and you go recruit in the fall and in the spring, year after year. And again, it's not educating to grow your brand. So I was surprised that was so low, which is a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Couldn't agree more, Gail.
Good. Well, I was also surprised about the we have always done it this way. I was at the LinkedIn offices earlier this week attending a university recruiting boot camp, and there was a lot of that, well, we've always done it this way mentality. So maybe this audience is a different representation that was at LinkedIn. If so, I hope. There's hope. I want to kind of kick things off as we really dive into university recruitment. And as I mentioned, I was at the LinkedIn offices earlier this week. I was able to hear their evangelist for their career and college services, John, speak, and he had some really great insights. One thing that was interesting that I wasn't even aware of, but actually last year they changed their term of service, LinkedIn did, to allow for 14-year-olds to be able to create profiles and accounts. So LinkedIn is really heavily focusing their efforts on university students, future students, as well as alumni. So I think it really fits in nicely to what we're going to be talking about here as we go forward. So why LinkedIn and really university recruiting outside of LinkedIn is important? Soft skills are important, and it's not just about the degree. You see a number of professionals, including myself, that are working in arenas that have nothing to do with the degree programs they were in. My degree is actually in anthropology and business, but I ended up working in human resources. And I know a number of people that didn't go to school for the profession that they're now working in. So you can see here why this is so important, and this is a survey, I believe from, where's this from?
NACE.
Here. From NACE, our friends at NACE, that tells us what's important when we're locating talent and fitting organizational needs. So it's not just about your degree, it's about these other areas. So I want to ask Danielle first, what soft skills are most important to you as an employer?
Sure. So I think to me in general, especially for a new college grad, the ability to want to problem solve and dig deep and really get to understanding and find information on their own without always needing the constant support or guidance. We want them to feel like they have the autonomy to go and find answers and really dig deep into a problem and go as far as they can. But then I think the soft skill that is partnering with that is also that decision-making soft skill as well, which says, okay, I've gone as far as I can, now I need help, or now I need to ask additional questions of more people. So those two are a fine balance where we say, run with it, go find the answer, but know when you are now getting to a point where you're either wasting some time or you have come against a wall and you've sort of admitted that and know you need to now then be able to go out and ask for more help and with other people at the organization. And so those are the two I think are most important when we're at RMS looking for new college grads.
And
what about you, Gail?
I was going to say, if I could add on to that, in recruiting engineers and software developers, the ability to communicate is so important, because if they can't stand in front of a customer or talk to me who's in human resources and bring it down to my level, it's for some, it's an idea that they may not even understand it well enough themselves to be able to do that. So communication skills are highly valued, even in the high-tech and software industries, and we look for it all the time so they can relay what their findings were or when they're stuck. and how to get that next step and move things forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and Danielle, again, based on those communications, it's also important to remember it's not always about talking to clients. It's about talking to your coworkers and your peers as well, that if you are in a heavy technical position, you still have to be able to let others know what you're working on, let others know where you are in your process, in your program, in your project, for handoffs, for, when you have to throw things over the wall to the next group to pick things up. Especially if you're then in a global organization, sometimes there's a follow the sun mentality where you have to hand something off at the end of your business day for the next group to pick it up and continue on the working. So you always want to make sure that whether it's written communication, verbal communication, a combination of both, whatever the need is for your organization, that you really think about the communication skill that you're looking for.
I'll just add that I really think that the skill that you use that's maybe most important really depends on the role that you're in. Like I see, for example, at the very bottom, ability to sell or influence others. If you're in a marketing role or capacity, not necessarily a technical position like an engineer, that skill would be valued higher for me if I have somebody who's going to be managing my social media or working in a media relations role. So, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about some statistics. I am a lover of stats. I think they're a great way to establish value, prove a point, and they're also really wonderful tweetable nuggets. So I was really surprised when I saw some of these numbers, but then again, not so much. And one number particularly that we don't have listed on here that resonated with me earlier this week at the LinkedIn offices was that 50% of LinkedIn's profile views are mobile. And I know this isn't a webinar about mobile, but it's something to consider as we're engaging university students is to use the channels that resonate with them most. Gail, is there any statistic here that surprised you or that you think is more important than another?
No, one thing that did surprise me, it said 52% of the recruiters surveyed believe that talent pipeline building and retention are their number one priority. I would have thought that should have been 80 or 90%. And it surprises me that anyone wouldn't believe that that's the most important piece to this, because we're really always in the process of building our pipeline and trying to retain the valuable players at our company.
Danielle, is there any stat here that
the one that jumped out, it's funny, I have a pen in my hand and I'm circling, that 50% of the new grads start off as interns at their organizations is such a great stat to know. And I think when you're building out a university relations program, it's important to remember that you're not always just looking for the new or recent grads, that you have to tap into the underclassmen as well and really make sure that your company's brand is known to the juniors and the sophomores and even the freshmen. I mean, especially based on a few slides back, you talked about LinkedIn targeting 14-year-olds. Now you're talking about sophomores in high school, not even sophomores in college. So being able to get these students to know your brand, know your company, know your culture, know your values, possibly have the opportunity to have them come and intern with you, and then be able to roll over and convert to a full-time hire, it changes the game a little bit. It changes what the talent pool looks like for the new graduating class when majority of the interns, or at least half the interns, are converting over to be full-time employees after a summer.
Right. There's one thing that's not mentioned here. I mean, and I know it's very specific to sales, but this goes back to the whole intern thing also. Again, 30% less turnover rate and 50% faster ramp up if you were to bring on an intern that comes from a sales program specifically. I thought that was something very interesting also that I know that LinkedIn had a survey that came out about.
Yeah, which shows that focusing your relationships with students or new grads that are graduating from those specific programs is key. They have the skills. I actually had a phone call yesterday with a professor at a university that they have an HR program, and they're teaching an intersession HRIS class. from which I thought was pretty interesting, and that they're actually going to go through the technology and learn how to input people into an applicant tracking system and onboard them. So looking at students that are in a program or an environment that are getting additional skills, they have already tested things out a little bit. It's almost like an internship in a sense.
Right.
Yeah, even micro internships are important to pay attention to as well. So.
Gail touched on this a little bit ago when we were talking specifically about technical recruiting, and I'd like for all of us to think, because many of us are not just specifically focused in one area. You might be looking for students that are graduating from engineering as well as marketing, or maybe you're putting them into your management training program. So, but technical recruiting, especially here living in Silicon Valley, has never been so competitive. I have seen people and engineers post things on social media sites that are anonymous. One is called Secret, and they said, "I'm ready to leave Google." And then you watch the dogs come in, and there are recruiters like crazy going, "Hey, give me a call." So it's super competitive. But what is really important is to start engaging and developing relationships. So I really want to be able to go ahead and pass this over to RMS, because they have a really great story of how they've been engaging and building relationships with technical students in a really hyper-competitive environment.
Gail, did you want to just give a background on who RMS is?
I would, and most of you have probably never heard of RMS. We're a 25-year-old company that was founded in Stanford University, and the first line on the slide says, "RMS technology enables the world to have a more complete view of catastrophic risk." That's a pretty hefty thing out there. So what we really do is we take data from years and years, and we take data for earthquakes and pandemics and hurricanes and flooding, and we compile models that the insurance companies and reinsurance companies use to build their strategy on pricing and management and transfer of risk. So our customers are really the 400 biggest insurance, reinsurance, and financial institutions out there. They use our models and analytics, and you could really describe us, and Danielle introduced me to this, as we're really the bookies for the insurance companies. Some of the challenge, and we're also the winning most company for the Candidate Experience Awards. If any of you have ever could take a look at this, the Talent Board offers some interesting advice on candidate experience, and the focus for RMS and our recruiting process and our onboarding process is always the candidate experience. We run into some challenges all the time, because since we don't have a brand name, we're trying to figure out how to stand out in the crowd. And I will admit, we are a small company. We have about 1,200 people worldwide, and we have one person, and that's Danielle, who runs our recruiting team for the university side of it.
For the U.S.
For the U.S.
Yeah. I don't want to dismiss my colleagues globally. There are people in other countries.
Still impressive, though. Still impressive.
The other thing that we have is that we have a significant number of applicants, and we're looking for applicants who range from having meteorology degrees to computer science degrees. So we're looking at a full complement of different majors and types of people. So we're finding that we have a lot of applicants for our small training program that we offer, and we need to figure out how we can educate the students so they're not just looking at the brand names, and we've done this by getting in early and often to the universities. So I'm going to let Jessica and Danielle take it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's one thing on here that I'd like for you to guys to elaborate on. The very last bullet point where it says educate the students enough so they can educate their parents. I know this is something that we've talked about before in the past. If you could just kind of, speak to that, I think that's something that everybody here would all, obviously enjoy hearing about.
Absolutely. And so, as Gail was saying earlier, when you're a three-letter acronym, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily automatically scream who you are unless you're a household name or something that has been around for so many years that it's so ingrained in popular culture, or your parents have used that service, or you as a consumer have maybe used that service or bought that product. So when we're talking about such a niche market of insurance, reinsurance, and financial institutions using us as their modeling company, it's not something that you can go into a store and buy off a shelf. And so when you say you work for RMS, we started 25 years ago. The idea is that in different countries where we serve, if you typed in RMS years ago, it might have popped up what the most popular RMS was in your geographic area. And so as an organization, we've been making sure that we've been putting our name out there, our brand out there, and making sure that outside of just our consumer, but also and our competitors, but also future colleagues and the general population understand who we are. And so that will help us. When it comes time for a new college grad, especially, I think we touched base a little bit in some of the bullets, and we might talk a little bit more about this generation of student. The majority of them are millennials, unless they're returning students. The millennials are very ingrained with their parents in their decision-making process, especially if it's your first job out of college. It's not a job that you usually take lightly. It is also the catapult, hopefully, to the career that you ultimately have. And so if you are a really amazing student and a great applicant, chances are you may have more than one offer, or you may have multiple offers, and you're sitting there and really making that decision to say, where do I want to go? What's that first job I want on my resume, or possibly the lifelong job I want on my resume? What kind of work will I go into? What kind of experience will I have? And usually what's important to a student or a new or recent grad might be a little bit different than what's important to a parent because of the generation differences. And so a parent might be looking for, you need to have a good name brand on there because it'll stay with you, on your resume for years to come. It's okay to have 400 people doing the exact same job you're doing. It's good to make sure that you're learning from others. You'll have a good, strong network. This will be, a good lesson, a good, learning experience. Whereas students nowadays are really looking for organizations where they can make an impact, where they see immediate results, where they are going to an organization that has a good, strong culture, where it has, corporate social responsibility as well as a challenge to their everyday working tasks. So when the students can understand your company so well and be able to show that excitement and the passion to their parents when they get that offer, or when they're talking about flying to whatever town to have an interview, you want to make sure that the parents feel engaged as well with your organization, that they're also understanding that when they go to the website, it's something that they can talk about. As Gail was saying earlier, our company is not a simple company. It's a very complex, terabytes of data and weather and historic perils and plagues and pandemics. It's not something that when you start talking on the surface is very easy to say, well, this is what I do at my organization. And so we want to make sure that students come in and they get a chance to ask us just as many questions as we ask them in the interview process. So when they walk out, they feel like they can make the best educated decision they can about an offer. And that usually comes down to them going home and talking to a mentor, a parent, a friend, an advisor, and weighing those options. And hopefully they can speak to our company as if they already worked here, rather than feeling like they just skimmed the surface on our website.
One of the other things that I was really impressed with your guys' program in particular, because you went in and hit the nail on the head. You're not a large, well-known brand, but that doesn't mean that you guys can't provide a state-of-the-art program. And one of the things that I really love about what you guys are doing is the 6-week orientation and onboarding program that's regional. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So each year we have a risk analyst training program. And what it is if you boil it down, is essentially a extended orientation for a campus to corporate workforce. And so when the new college grads or recent college grads start with us, we actually have them all start on the same day regionally. So all the U.S. grads this year are starting on July 7th. All the European grads are starting together on September 29th. And in India, it will be based off of, I believe, in the October timeframe. So the way that the students work is that they come together. And so instead of day one orientation of fill out your paperwork, here's your computer, off to your desk, best of luck, we actually keep them together as a class of. So this year's class of 2014 will be arriving on July 7th, and they'll have 6 weeks of orientation, training, company history, product knowledge. They'll get a chance to meet some senior folks, have roundtables. There'll be some networking exercises. There will be professional and business acumen types of events that we'll ask them to work through together. And what it allows them to do is really build an internal network as well. So they're all getting a baseline of information about the company, but then they also build this internal network of folks that they know in different departments and in different locations throughout the organization. So when they do get back to their desk after that 6-week training, and a question may arise where they don't know the answer and it's something out of their wheelhouse or out of their department, they may already have a contact, someone they just hung out with for 6 weeks in another department that they can reach out to and say, hey, can you help me out? The other thing is we use an internal instant messaging, chatter, jabber type of system, and so they're able to also set up a group within that and keep in touch with each other as they grow in the organization. And what we, as HR, we don't monitor it. They're employees; they can write to each other. But I ask every so often, "Hey, what are you guys chattering about? Is there anything on there that I can help with?" And a lot of times, they're really writing to each other, saying, "Hey, I just got out of a meeting, heard this acronym. Wanted you guys to know this is what it stands for in case you hear it." So it's really nice. They're actually using it as a forum to share information that they're learning about the organization as well. There are definitely chatters on there to say, like, we're all going out for dinner tonight. Does everybody want to go? But again, most of it is really focused on getting together, talking about what they're learning so that they feel a little bit more educated when they go out into their own department meetings.
I think this is so key. And when we talked about this, I felt like I was taken back to my, experience as a recent college grad. I went through Target's university training program, and it was a 13-week program. Absolutely wonderful. And you're building relationships with peers, but then you're also being exposed to other people within the organization that you're able to call on when you need help, because otherwise it kind of feels like you're going through rush at a sorority or a fraternity, and you're being put through all these paces. So having a training and onboarding program like that gives you some time to acclimate, and then you build those relationships, which are so key for retention and productivity.
I think it's important to say, though, I know that everybody on this call is coming from different size organizations. So this may not work for a very small organization to say, I can't take 6 weeks out to manage a program for 12, 20, 30, 400, however many students you have. So tailor it to your organization, know what the need is. If anything, if the only thing you can do is having a separate day one orientation for the new college grads versus the experienced hires, and maybe running them simultaneously so the new college grads are together on that first day. And if day one orientation, because their line of questioning is going to be so different than someone who has come to your organization with stock options and families, and they need to get this person transferred and 401ks moved, and these new college grads are going to have a different line of questioning, and you want to make sure they're in a safe environment where they feel like they can answer the questions and ask the questions that are really important to them. And that may be relevant to the others that are sitting around the table as well. So if anything, if you can't run a 6-week, 10-week, 14-week program, at least try to separate them on day one from your experienced hires for a different type of orientation.
Great. Wonderful insights. And so we want to talk a little bit about quick wins. We touched on this a little bit when we were talking about competing with big brands. And just to kind of give you an idea, Disney, in talking with a former recruiter over there, he would have his regional area or a number of college campuses that he would go on, and they had a zero-based budget. So basically, the only way he needed to be known was getting out there saying, I'm with Disney, and then using a roll of stickers as incentive to get candidates and interns or new college grads excited about working for the brand. So when you're competing with something like that, it can be extremely challenging. So I want to talk about some of the things that you guys have done to really establish yourself on campus. Danielle, do you want to kind of kick it off here?
Sure. I think the first thing to remember is to be true to who you are as a company. If you are a small or mid-sized company, don't feel like you have to then say, well, our number one competition is the biggest, kid on the block. Know who your competition is, your true competition as where are you losing candidates to, and be true to who you are. The Disney story is a great story. Disney has a great brand name. They're known for being very youthful and fun. It is the happiest place on earth. It makes sense to get a sticker with probably one of your favorite characters on it. So that's a great story. I think that making sure that you know what your company brand is, that you don't go out and misrepresent what your organization does or what the culture of your organization is important to note as well. For RMS, and if I could speak to the slide that's up on the screen right now, Gail talked about pandemics and our life risks. We have a whole modeling division that focuses on life expectancy, mortality, and pandemics. And not the most exciting topic or doesn't quite sound like maybe the most fortunate topic, but it's really important to life insurance and so on and so forth. And so that's something that we are looking at as a company. And about a year or so ago, Plague Inc. was a game that came out on the App Store. It was one of the fastest selling apps and fastest downloaded apps. And the premise of the game is that we did not invent the game, so let me make that clear. Plague Inc. created this game. The premise of the game is that you are a new bacteria, and your job is to infect the globe, and as morbid as it is, and then kill everyone off before a cure is found. And so while that doesn't necessarily automatically scream like, oh, I should go work at RMS, what you want to think about is, and what our talent acquisition team thought about was, they're using the same type of game theory and modeling algorithms that we use as well in our life risk division. So how could we maybe call the creators of Plague and talk to them about how we could possibly partner, and how do they see us, as well? How can we work with them? And so what the final decision was is, because they are so closely aligned, RMS is now on the game Plague. We are now an expert character embedded into the game. So when you play the game, you pay your download fee, or you get it for free, and you are playing Plague. What will happen is RMS reports will pop up in the midst of the game, and our data and our information will actually help you strategize better to make better decisions and get a higher score and possibly win the game. And so that was something that we did. Again, technology company, we're a young, fun company. We deal with mortality and pandemics. I mean, all the dots really connected for us, and so Plague was one of the ways that we used for marketing, for talent acquisition, for brand recognition, engagement of a younger audience. So all the things that we talked about in those first few slides, Plague was one of those great ways for us to hit all of those bullets. Shall I go on to the next of some of the other quick wins that were?
Absolutely.
Okay. The other thing that's important to note is it's very easy to get wrapped up in college recruiting and the university's calendar. I think that most of the career offices have a strong hold on the career fair dates, the resume drop deadlines, when info sessions can occur, when first round interviews have to happen, when decision round interviews have to happen, when students have to make decisions by. And these are all really great points on a calendar for us to monitor. But what starts to happen is we become process managers rather than recruiters. And we just sort of live and die by that calendar. We plug all the dates in, and then we work our way backwards. Okay, if I can make an offer this day, then I need to get offers out this day, then I have to interview by this day. I should have my info session this day. And so the drop date is this day. And we kind of work our way backwards. And while that works, and you want to make sure that you're being very targeted to say, how do I actually identify the students I want to have apply to my company? How do I want to engage? how do I want to continue to be the recruiter for my organization? And so one of the things that we've done is we've done coffee chats. And I'll give you an example. We had a university that we have a great relationship with. We have a good alumni base here at RMS from that university. And the career fair was coming up, and we did not get our registration in time. It happens far too often for so many organizations that you say, I want to go, and they've already closed their registration, or there's no tables left, or your waiting list. And we got to the point where we were now not able to attend the career fair. We said, well, we don't want to miss out on the opportunity of talking to students. What should we do? And so we sat with our young alums who were here and asked them, okay, the day of the career fair, you were there last year. Walk me through your day that day. And so they talked about very simple things. Well, I had some classes, and then I went here, and then we went there, and then everybody kind of hits the coffee shop on the corner before they walk into the auditorium or the gym before they walk around. And so we started to talk a little bit more about everyone sort of hits that coffee shop. Why would we not then be available at the coffee shop? So one of the things we did was we had one of our young alums send a message out to his social media groups, whether it was his previous classes, using Twitter. He was using listservs. His department head of the department he belonged to, some of his old classmates who are still a year behind or 2 years behind, and said, listen, I am going to be sitting at that coffee shop the day of the career fair. If anybody stops by my table and wants to ask me why I love working at RMS, I'll buy them a cup of coffee. And we hired a student out of the coffee chat. It cost us, 10 cups of coffee, and we hired somebody. And so things like that are really important, not to get discouraged, to say, well, we missed the prescribed way of going to a career fair that day. Think about different ways that you can engage the students and talk to them about your organization and the jobs that are available. The final thing that sort of tees up to this, again, about thinking of the prescribed way, Gail mentioned it's in the U.S., it's just me. I am our university relations recruiting team. I am out on campuses. I am talking to students. I cannot be everywhere all the time, right? There is only one of me, and like so many of you, there may only be 1, 2 to 5 of you, and you really just can't be everywhere. And so if you have a very targeted approach, that's fantastic, but there's always going to be conflicts on certain calendar days. And so we partnered with WePow, and this was life-changing, right? Because for us, I didn't have to make sure that I hosted a first-round interview at every single school that I wanted to go to or where I had a relationship. We were able to meet students immediately on campus, whether at the career fair, an info session, or just meeting them, because we do that as well. You just go out and meet students. And we automatically sent them an email and said, it was great meeting you. You want to interview with us? Click here. And it was a WePow link. And so these students had the ability to interview with us immediately after meeting with us. And that changed everything. So we then weren't, again, living by the calendar saying, this is when we have to be on campus. It reduced our costs of travel. It gave the students who are extremely comfortable with technology to do this interview at 3 in the morning from their dorm, from their library, from their parents' house. It is kind of an interesting thing to be on this side of the camera and observe where they're taking their interviews, and you could see a lot of their dorm rooms and their choice of posters on their walls, so you have to look past that. But it was really great for us to be able to hit those students at the time that it was important for them. It was an immediate response, which a millennial generation, facts are out there, they love instant gratification. They want to be high touch right away. And then it allowed me to really expand the geographical reach. I didn't have to just target the 10 to 12 schools that I was really focused on. At this point, I was able to post my job through NACE Link and get it out to the targeted schools I wanted to go to. And when the students applied, say to them, why don't you go ahead and take the WePow interview and we can go from there. We have had managers who I've sent the WePow link to say, listen, take a look. If you like this candidate, we will bring them in. And the managers have written back and said, that's enough for me. I'm willing to make an offer. I'll talk to them on the phone, but after the conversation, my last sentence will be, I'd like to make you an offer. So we've actually hired people without even having them come to the office, and we've just hired them off of their WePow interview.
Wow. That's how powerful is that, and quick, and easy.
Absolutely.
Danielle, one of the questions that came in is, have you ever had a problem with this tool in terms of any type of discrimination? What is your response to that, and how have you worked with the managers?
So I always watch the first round, so I feel, not to say that all HR people are perfect. I'd like to say, since that's probably what's on this call, can we say that we are all perfect? But having somebody from University Relations, having somebody from HR, from your talent acquisition team, watch the first round and shortlist, there's no difference for me than if they were to come in face to face, or if they had sent their resume. I mean, they're talking about themselves the same way they do. It allows them the forum to expand on their resumes. I have not seen the discrimination. I guess that's more of a question to WePow if they've heard of anything from a student standpoint. So maybe Bridget knows, but from an RMS standpoint, no. All of our experience has been very positive.
It's Bridget here. I would say absolutely not. No problems whatsoever. If anything, it actually gives the candidate a more authentic experience, in the sense that on a piece of paper, there's only so much that you can say about yourself. When you have the ability to show who you are, again, those soft skills come into play. It actually is a much better interview experience.
And one of the things that's important is a lot of most students, but really most candidates, their takeaway from an interview usually is, I wish I had more time to highlight things, or someone had given me a free, an open spot to freely dialogue a little bit, or to talk about myself a little bit more, other than what was being asked of me or what was on my resume. And so we always end our last question with, is there anything else about yourself that you would like us to know? Is there anything that we haven't asked you or haven't covered that you want to make sure we know? And we hear everything. We've heard everything from, I really want to move to the East Coast because, that's where my fiance lives, and that's why that office is my choice. I've heard, I really like cats. That's okay. That's good to know too. I mean, if you want me to tell me that, it's your opportunity to tell us about yourself. And maybe I'm a cat lover, and that's fine. I mean, the idea is it's the candidate's opportunity to highlight who they are and what they want their future employer to know about them and what's important to them.
I think that last piece is critical. Asking them, what's most important, if there's anything they wanted to add, because we've all been in an interview where we felt like, man, if I just had one more minute to just tell them a little bit more about me, I might have gotten that opportunity. So I think that's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about lessons, because we're hearing all these wonderful things that you guys are doing. I mean, you're in a video game. How exciting. But what things have you learned over really implementing and getting extremely creative with your university recruiting that you can share with those who are turning into the webcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we talked about the university calendar. I think the lesson learned is, don't completely ignore it. Don't, turn your nose to it. It's very important to understand the university calendar. It's also very important to understand the rules of engagement if they're a NACE-regulated school, and know when the deadlines are of when the students are allowed to accept, or how much time the students have to make decisions. Don't go too rogue. You want to make sure that you're still respectful of the university calendar, so the students don't feel that they've been put into compromising positions to make decisions before they really needed to, or were told that they had to by their university. But once you truly understand that calendar, I think then you're allowed to, bend, right? Don't necessarily break the rules, but you can bend around them. And I think that's what we just sort of talked about in the previous slides. The other thing is, most universities are really big. The entry level, the entry points are not just the career office. get to know your department heads, get to know professors, get to know the student-run organizations, get to know the social organizations, know who the professional groups are. These are really great ways to target what you're looking for. If you're looking for marketing students, find out where the marketing club is. It's so much easier now than it was years ago. I mean, you used to have to make a lot of phone calls. You used to have to call the directory. You had to find a lot of people. Everything's online now. Most groups or clubs or organizations have Twitter feeds. They've got Twitter handles. They've got an email listserv. They've got maybe they even have a Facebook page or a LinkedIn profile. So you want to be able to do some of that research ahead of time and know what you're looking for. Target that audience. Standing at a career fair for PhDs when you're looking for interns maybe isn't the right use of your time. You want to, again, also target which events you go to. Don't go to the engineering event if you're looking for liberal arts majors, or vice versa. Most schools have changed it now, especially the bigger schools, where instead of one university event, they'll break it down by major or by school or by interest. So again, really take the time to investigate and find out where your points of entry are, so that way you can have really strong relationships with those groups. They ultimately become great talent pipelines for you, because if you hire one person from that group, they will share that with the class below and the class below. And when you need to re-engage with that group next year, who better than to go back and re-engage than the person you just hired the year before, which then makes, I think, the life of a university relations recruiter a little bit easier, because it frees up some of your time to make your current employers, especially your young employers who have all that energy, ambassadors to your company, and have them go out and talk to the class below them. And then I'll let Gail talk about the candidate experience, because she really focuses a lot of that for our organization.
The candidate experience is really important for us, and we want to understand that the candidate is the focus of this. So everything that we put out, whether it's an email, an offer letter, or just an engagement with them, it's sort of making them feel special, and we want them to stay engaged. And our candidates are potentially future customers of ours. And if they become employees, they can be referrals for us. Our referral rate actually fills about 30 to 40% of our open jobs. And the younger candidates, the people that we've just recruited off campus, are our biggest referrers. And Danielle has engaged this group by getting them to go back to their schools, which most of them love to do, and making them feel a part of this process. So the focus is on trying to keep the person engaged once they belong, and then keep them motivated. A question came up on the referral process in terms of pros and cons. We tried a program where we bumped up the referral amount to $10,000 for some particular roles. And that actually hasn't worked any better than keeping it back at our regular $1,500. We've only given out a handful of the $10,000 amounts. So it's not necessarily the money that the person is looking for, but it's really how proud they are of working for the company, how much do they like the company and respect the people there. So I
think the other thing, Gail, to remember is the candidate experience. We have also internal transfers. So an employee might be working for us for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, and then see another role internally and want to apply for an internal position. They're still candidates. So your current employee population are candidates as well. And so from talent acquisition, I know a lot of times people say, well, now that you're hired, you signed your offer letter, you're no longer my responsibility, off to your HR business partner. It's not true. Your talent acquisition team needs to stay engaged with your employee population all the time, because there are employees internally who are employees and candidates at the same time, because they're looking for internal transfer and internal mobility. And so, just keeping that in mind as well. and then I know that there was a question on the line from Beth as well about engaging professors and department heads and what's worked. There's a lot of different ways, Beth, that you can get involved with department heads and professors. The first way to do that, I would say, is touch base with the alumni population you have at your organization from their school and find out what departments they came from. You'll probably start to see a lot of similarities of which groups or departments, or at least which college within the university that they came from, and ask them about the professors, the department heads, which ones were engaged, which ones had a lot of energy, which ones seemed to highlight certain students to certain companies. They all sort of have that experience now, which has been fantastic to hear from our alumni population and our recent grads. And what they've done is they have been the avenue to introduce. Sometimes it's easier to go back with an alumnus to their university to be introduced and then go from there. So I think that the professors are really looking for connections as well. A lot of times they have a really great student that has so much potential and they just don't know how to get them in front of the employer of their choice. Advisors are fantastic because the advisors, especially at a smaller school, really know their students and what their dream job is, and that advisor can allow them to say, well, don't look at that dream company, let's talk about what the dream job is, and there are other organizations where you could do that type of role. And so if RMS or your organization is at the top of that professor's mind, you want to make sure that that pops up. And I got to tell you, just like Gail said, an employee referral is great, and I'll take that all day. But just as much, I'll take it when a professor emails me with one resume, because professors don't send every student along. They find that one or two per year that they really feel were the top of their class or the top of their grade. And if they can forward me one resume and say, this was the student in my class this year that RMS should hire, that does not go unnoticed.
Great. I just want to point out from actually the Candidate Experience Awards that 49% of candidates have some relationship with the company. So whether it's because they downloaded the video game and they saw RMS, or it's through a professor at the university, they have some sort of relationship with the organization before they apply. And 64% of candidates are sharing their experiences with the company as part of the interviewing and hiring process on social media, which makes engagement and experience really, really important. We're all living in I call it the performance of now time. Everything is everywhere, all in real time. Scary and good at the same time. Let's go ahead and move to the next poll question that we have here, which is, where are you with your university recruiting program? Are you a newbie? Are you just getting started, well-established, or maybe you've been around for a little while and you're looking to innovate? What are some things that we can do to be a little bit more fresh or creative with our recruiting programs? I'll give you all a minute here.
I love seeing the looking to innovate come through.
I know. This is awesome. See? One more thing that I'll say about candidate experience, and then we'll go to the slides here with the poll results. But 1 in 5 candidates are actually customers. So RMS is actually right on. The people that they're engaging on campus are going to be future customers or current customers, or maybe their parents are. So the candidate experience doesn't just impact your recruiting program and the retention in your organization, but it impacts customer retention too. All right, let's go ahead and show our poll results if we are able. This is interesting. Are you guys
great? These are great results.
I know. Wow. So I am surprised, like the looking to innovate piece. Then again, I'm not, but I'm glad that you guys are here, and RMS is doing some really awesome and innovative things, even if it's just as simple as coffee at the coffee shop right up the street, which is so simple and so easy, but really makes an impression.
I think you almost have to right now, especially with university talent, just from the standpoint of, I know we've talked about this before in past calls, students are no longer going to career fairs. They're going to gather tchotchkes and this, so it's more of a marketing game now, but it is actually a true recruiting game whenever you're going to the career fairs. So I think you have to do something. You have to be creative. You have to take a few risks.
Well, let's go ahead and head on over to the next slide because I think this one is really going to help us go back after the end of this webcast and get started. So where do we go from here? How do we get started? What do we need to do? What do you guys, I'm going to start with Gail. What do you feel is one of the key ingredients that you can't live without in your university recruiting efforts?
The biggest thing is buy-in. If we don't have the leadership buy-in that this is an important pipeline for us, we're out, and it's not even worth keeping up your program. So if you're not willing to commit to go out year after year, and it doesn't have to be expensive, it can just be touch points along the way, not even the career fair, it could be phone calls. You got to do it. As soon as you stop going for one school, you're going to lose that school for a few years until you can reestablish those relationships. So unless your leadership team is ready to buy in and you can get people to help you out on these campuses, it's going to be a pretty hard road to get in there.
What about you, Gail? Or Danielle, sorry.
Sure, no worries. It feels uncomfortable to take risks sometimes, especially if you have a well-established program and you're at a more traditional company. And even if it's not that much more of a traditional company, but even if it's more of something as simple as being a publicly traded company, right? There tend to be a little bit more restrictions around what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot say. And so I understand that. I worked other places than just RMS, but I think that if you can have the trust, as Gail said, the trust and the buy-in from your senior leaders, but that you're also able to step out of that comfort zone and try something different. The trick is if you're going to fail, prove that you can fail fast and get up and move on and try something else. Swearing by something, saying you're going to do it until it works is not the way to recruit. You have to try things that are topical and are for the season and for the candidate. Know your candidate, know who you are, and know who your company is, know your brand. Don't express yourself in a different way than who you truly are. We would never send someone to a career fair dressed in a suit because we don't wear suits to our office. So things like that you want to just be true to your brand, true to your culture, and I think that'll come through to the students when you're talking to them.
Wonderful. I put some resources up here on the board for you. NACE, WePow has a wonderful university recruiting playbook, and then Intern Match has a state of the internship survey that they do. They have a lot of really great resources there. We've had a number of questions, and we are really at time. So I am going to go ahead and just move here over to the next slide. I wanted to say thank you to Bridget from WePow. Thank you. Thanks again to Danielle and Gail. And I guess I'll hand over to Danielle if we do have time for questions or anything to add. But I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. And members, I am afraid that we have run out of time for today's webcast, but please feel free to head over to any of our social media channels, like our LinkedIn group page, or onto Twitter using the hashtag HCIWebcast if you would like to continue that discussion virtually out there. Again, I want to reiterate our thanks to our guests, Jessica, Danielle, Gail, and Bridget, and to WePow for making this webcast possible. And of course, our biggest thank you of all goes out to all of our HCI members. We appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon to spend with us, and we look forward to seeing you on another webcast again soon.